Welcome to the Grand Collaborations, a part of the Grand Podcast. My name is Nik Claesen, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grand. The Grand is now open for business, and I have therefore created the segment The Grand Collaboration, where I will launch podcast collaborations with partners. This podcast episode is a collaboration between the RM Framework project funded by Horizon Europe and The Grand. Research management is a job title that keeps getting more and more solid ground under its feet. From a role with little or no recognition to now being acknowledged by most countries in the EU as a vital role in research organizations. One of the reasons why the research management role has reached this point is because of a dedicated community around Europe that has insisted on shaping the role and demanding that it is taken seriously in the research community. Part of this big job has been done through EU-funded projects that have given the community the opportunity to define, shape, build and connect through the projects like Formation and RM Roadmap. The RM Framework project is a natural continuation of this, further consolidating the role. EU funds are supporting the consortium developing a European qualification system for research management by standardizing educational and training programs and elaborating a quality label to enhance interoperability and improve the research management profession within the European research area. The Grand and RM Framework will over 15 episodes dig into the different parts of the project and follow the development over the next 1.5 years. Here in this first episode, I have the coordinator of the project, Nik Claesen, managing director at EARMA, into the virtual podcast studio to introduce the project. Please enjoy. Welcome to the Grand EU Funding Podcast. Now, this is a collaboration podcast. It's part of my collaboration corner of the podcast, and this means that I've made a collaboration with someone when I am here. So that means that there's an agreement between the sender of information and myself. And this is something that everybody can reach out to me about if that's something that you want to do, especially EU projects that we're talking about here. And Nik, welcome.
Thank you, Niels. Great to be here.
Yes, and let me first thank you so much for engaging with the grant, because this is indeed something that I would very much like to use the podcast tool also for, to help and support projects out there in your ambitions to share your message in different ways.
Yeah. We thought also it was very important that we reach out to different target groups, that we reach out in innovative ways, and I think the medium of the podcast is very much having a big boom, and we wanted to make sure that people also could, through this medium, know about the project and about the movement surrounding it.
Yeah, and I can promise the listeners, so this is not, so regular listeners will know that my regular flow, I release episodes Sunday noon, and this we'll try to release them midweek on Wednesdays. So it's clearly shown for everybody that this is in a different corner of the grant. And what we can promise you is that we will have 15 episodes over the next year and a half. So it's going to be a frequency of probably sort of every 6 weeks from the end of August. So you will have a nice flow of information coming in relation to this project. Now, we keep people in oblivion, but first, Nik, please present yourself shortly.
Thank you, Neil. So I'm Nik Claesen, Belgian-born, Dutch-speaking, but also like speaking French and other languages, including English, luckily, for this podcast. So I'm the managing director of EARMA, so the European Association of Research Managers and Administrators, but also the coordinators of the RM Roadmap project, which many of you might have heard about, and the coordinator of the newer project, which is the project we're talking about today, the RM Framework project. I have a background in European projects and policy. Mainly, I started as an expert on the participant portal, which is now the funding and tender portal, on EU budgets, policy, proposal writing, some project execution, and so on. I did a bit of bid consulting, mainly for Brussels University, VUB. I worked a bit for Imperial College, and then started coming into this wonderful world of European associations. I started actually with the Best Practice Project with my international networking. Great project, great vision also of the cost office at that time to make that a targeted network, and then start getting into EARMA, start getting into the working groups, the community, the movement. And in that way, I applied in 2016 to be the managing director of EARMA. And now, almost 9 years later, here we are with these great projects, with attention from the European Commission for all of this. And I couldn't be happier that these projects are here and the way things are evolving, although there are also many challenges in the world today, no least in also our research management and administration world.
Yeah. Well, first of all, well done, and I know that you are appreciated as director there, managing director, and also well done in relation to shedding light on the research management. Before we move into the fly-in, I'm just gonna share 2 lines about myself, because I might have a lot of new listeners because of the outreach of this series with people with interest in this specific project. Now, my background, I've been dealing for 16 years now with EU R&D funding, so that's my claim to fame, so to say. I've been sitting on many sides of the table, so national representative program committee. I've been a grants consultant. I've been a regional representative in Brussels. I've been supporting the offshore energy sector from Denmark, and so on. So I have a broad background, and currently I am the networking manager in Hydrogen Europe, also naturally dealing with funding. So that's my claim to fame. I have done this podcast for 3 years. It has weekly releases, and focus of the podcast is broadly ER&D funding. So I cover quite broadly both proposal preparation, project implementation, and lobbying, and the environments and communities that are involved in this. Just to get that right. I never promote myself, actually, just share what I'm doing. So this is what I realized, that I had to do this here. So that's it. Let's move into the fly-in here. So just a few words on the project and the area that we're talking about, research management.
Yeah. So maybe the area we're talking about, research management or research management administration or research support. There's always some discussion about the exact term, and there's a lot to be said about that. But I won't do that in the short fly-in here. It is pretty much, let's say, we're very inclusive with our definition at EARMA. Everybody who supports, manages research, so not doing the research, but everything around the research, which includes also researchers doing that, who are sometimes called blended professionals. So let's say in that space, that group of people, which is not fully professionalized yet, which is not a recognized profession, we've got a new project, and that new project started 1st of February of this year. And it's called RM Framework, and it's one of the pieces of the puzzle we need to get to that group to a professionalized environment. Maybe to say about that group, while we are geared reasonably academic or very academic, that group is there in the private sector. It's there not just in universities, all types of RPOs, which research performing organizations, research funding organizations. It's there in ministries and municipalities and cities and many different private and public sector, as I said. And the let's say the quest or the search towards how do we use this group and how do we make them as professional as possible. A lot of steps have been taken, and this is a next step in that. So the RM Framework project. The long title is Creating a European Framework for Research Management, Training and Networking. So what we're trying to do there is create a framework so people can create training that is better, that is more interoperable, so more easily to cooperate within Europe, which has a more solid foundation, and a foundation in the work that has been done at the EU level. Let's say very conceptually, how do you organize training and education for research managers better in Europe?
Yeah. And this is And this is vital for a professional role that is being putting two solid feet on the ground slowly, not only internally towards itself, so to say, its perception of itself, research management, but also of the outside world and the surrounding environment view on the role. So trainings and moving into that where it's going to have a stamp, quality stamp, it's going to be standardized. It's very, very important.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's something we underestimate often, sort of, because often people in the sector that are there for a while, they know, let's say, how it works, what should be done. But it's very, when you go to people a bit further removed, still very much sort of, let's say, within a research performing organization, within a university, wherever it might be in other places, sort of, okay, what are we talking about? Okay, you want investment, you want to be supported, incentivized, you're saying you have an important role in our ecosystem, but tell me, who is this group of people, right? And then when you don't have a clear definition, problem. What are their skills and competencies? And when you can't say that clearly, you have another problem. What is sort of the standardization? What is the training you're offering? What is the sort of the career pathway and so on? So we have not been able to give enough of an answer there because of the complexity, because of the state of maturity where it is in right now. But we're starting to do that now also at the EU level. And this is, let's say, maybe like the second, third, well, depends a bit what you count, right, of significant step towards being able to say, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do for the system. This is how we make sure that our people are quality professionals. And when we get that stuff in order, then there's a lot that still can be improved and which can strengthen the research and innovation system in Europe, but everywhere, also the member states, regions, organizations, and so on.
Yeah, and it bridges us right onto the next section of this introduction episode to the project. So, just having a short conversation about the background and the former projects that it's building upon, because nothing is an island, right? So, this is part of a line of development for the to support this role and build it up. So maybe we don't need to go into too much detail, but just to the motivation and what it comes from.
Yeah, people that know me, Niels, know that I'm very poor in not going into detail. So I'll try to I'll try
I'll
I'll
stop
try
you.
to yeah, I'll try to avoid it for you, and please do indeed stop me. So
Uh-huh.
with that, maybe it's good that I prioritize a little bit and stick to the, let's say, the European background of this, right?
Mm.
Because it
Yeah.
should be clear that this is moving in many different countries and many different niches. Because research management is, let's say, an umbrella term, right? You've got policy advisors in there, project managers, data stewards, proposal writers, financial controllers, legal people, and you can go on and on. If you condense it very much, you can get to 8 profiles, but they're then sort of groups of profiles, and you can go up to 40 or 50 profiles, and constantly new ones coming. That's also the good thing, such as with AI. So what I'm talking about now is, let's say, a general picture, which is hard, with a group really of professions that it's made up out of, and I'm going to focus on the EU level. And we had an extremely important development there some time ago in the depths of the pandemic 2020. The German presidency at the end there put forth in their council conclusions, they put forth that science management, here again, the terminology is an issue, should be professionalized, right? Which is great, because then in the frame of the European area, European research area, so the ERA policy agenda that followed upon that, there was priority given to an action which was about research management, which has just been renewed actually. And at that time, there were 2 pilot projects put in place: the ARM roadmap project, which I mentioned already, and our sister project, the Cardea project. We've been running with those projects for almost 3 years. Our roadmap is ending at the end of next month, so at the end of August 2025. So it's ending end of August 2025, and we are looking now what is the next step. And ARM framework constitutes that next step. because ARM roadmap, the Cardea project, were about a lot of basics, right? Sort of what do we want to do? Let's get the information about what we want to do. Let's start some training. Let's give information to everybody who wants it, including the European Commission, to move forward. And one of the key outcomes of this has been RM Comp, so Research Management Comp, which you might immediately think, hey, I know Research Comp, or maybe some of the other comps that the European Commission has adopted. And at the end of January of this year, 2025, we have had the Commission the Commission adopted the ARM Comp. ARM Comp is a skills and competency framework, right? We've got these two projects collaborated on this. The group surrounding, I won't go too deep into this, but let's say it's the member states and stakeholders surrounding this action, these projects coming with something for the first time adopted by the European Commission, skills and competency framework, right? So now we have this base. It's also got a definition attached to it. It isn't perfect. It's a living document where it can be updated, but it's there. It's significant. And now what is the next step? And this is what we put forward within this project. That next step is taking those skills and competency framework and making the link to training and education. So how do you use the skills and competency framework? And overall, how do you give quality training and research management? Because often that has been the case. If you want to give that, then okay, find out, right? Sort of go speak to people, network. You're an educational expert, get an expert in research management, start building it. What's that like in Spain? What's that like in France? What's it like in Croatia? And now we're developing something where you could say, hey, okay, got a skills and competency framework, maybe not fully like 100% what we use or how we use it, but we can refer to it. So it's going towards anchor points, towards standardization. Secondly, here we have a skills and competency, here we have a training framework. So that manual is supposed to come out of the ARM framework project. And there we can say, okay, we want to build training, not what training you should build, not what courses you should give, but what should you take into account to set up quality training based on this developing European body of work, the evidence we have for policymaking, ARM Comp, ARM framework. So you have a base, and that base can be the same for everybody. Of course, we're still in Europe, so everything is different for everybody, needs to be adjusted, needs to be thought about. It's not plug and play, but it's there. And it is the same for everybody who chooses to use it.
Excellent. So this is exactly, many people would think, but why is it necessary for the Commission to give a stamp on this? And why is it necessary for all these formalities? Why don't they just do the work of development? This is because when you want to build something structured around this, then if you want the Commission to set aside funding sources, if you want them to acknowledge the skill of this corner of profession, then it's vital, or it's very, very important for the next steps for organizations like EARMA here and their stakeholders to have that blue stamp in the book and say, this is a professional skill. It's recognized by the Commission, and it's recognized the importance of the work that they do. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. That's a very important nuance to get. Sort of when this is adopted, the work we're doing is not obligatory, right? So the Commission is not coming and saying, or we or whoever, you must do this in this way, right? That's not what it's about. What it's about is a need has been identified. The Commission has a coordinating role in this in the frame of the European research area, and is saying, hey, this will work better if you work in this way, in this direction, together as Europe. And then how research and innovation works, it's the competency of the member states and the associated countries and people working with Europe. It's the competency of the member states to say, well, we'll do it in this way. Right. So in that sense, it's also partly a coalition of the willing. And we're trying to convince people that this is the right direction to go in. So the Commission is not going to say, you must do this. Of course, what Commission could say at some point, which is not, I think, currently in the plans, but say, hey, you have to have good research management. And that means also that there is at least some training available, which sort of goes with this standard that we have in Europe. That's something that could come down the line, but that's definitely sort of not the primary thing we're trying to do today, or what the Commission is trying to do today. They're seeing there is a need for this within the member states to coordinate this better. So we are giving a direction, and we hope then that also we hope and we incentivize and we work with the member states. That's also why it's developed within the European research area. We develop it together, sort of stakeholders, commission, member states, that this is something that can also bring a stronger R&I system nationally, regionally, locally, so that we can proceed and that we can be stronger together.
Yeah. Yeah. And now let's bridge into the introduction of the project. But before we do that, maybe we owe the listeners, but there might be listeners here curious on what's this episode and what's. Let me listen to this. Just a brief on what is research management. So here we're talking about a function in research organizations mostly. Or to public universities or RTOs of private research organizations. And it's the function that helps and support the research, the individual researcher and the research teams in approaching funding often. Yeah? So it's the function that sort of clears the road for both identifying funding for the different teams and helps and supports the different research teams on how to approach that. And also supporting the research teams often in dressing up the text, draft text for proposal writing, and making sure that proposals are submitted. And then also post-project, of course, in the implementation phase, supporting the different research teams with often administrative tasks related to this. And maybe if you have anything else on top of that, that's worth mentioning about the research management role and the importance of it.
Yeah, just there's many roles, but everything that a researcher needs, let's say, which is not the research itself, can be research management within reason, of course, and anything that research organizations, performing organizations, funding organizations, other stakeholders to do with research, any need that they have to strengthen, to put in place policies, to do financial controlling, to do all of these things, that is all what we see as research management.
Exactly. Good. Let's move into the next block here. So, introduction to the project, and we promised each other before we here pre-recording that we wouldn't make it super boring running through work packages and so on. But just giving a sort of a fly into what is this project, what it is about, who has joined, what are the key elements, what's the important elements that should come out of this, and so on. So, hit me.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, and I won't go too much into the work packages, but maybe I'll go into it a little bit. But what we are trying to do, as I said, sort of in the short fly-in, we've got this situation, right, where we've got a skills and competency framework. We've got a lot of information for policy making purposes, and we want to make now what is this next step on this ladder of professionalization, which we all already sort of identified that. On this ladder towards what doesn't need to be ladder process, whatever you might call it, towards professionalization, you need to show, well, the relevance, obviously, let's say the value proposition. You need to show that you have a base, right? That you have good training and education, and also that there is, let's say, a coherence about it. Maybe standards, anchor points where people can go, certifications and accreditation, right? That's the direction we're moving in. And this project, you should, in those, let's say, those pillars of networking, awareness creation, capacity building, upskilling, you should put in upskilling. And with upskilling, we mean training, education. So taking the individual and increasing their skills and knowledge and competencies, right? So where this project is we're taking the skills and competency framework, RMComp, that was adopted. We're taking a lot of information from the co-creation exercise, which we did in the other projects, the survey we did there, the mapping we did there, all of the stuff we did there. And now we're saying, what can we learn from all of this base that we can give to people putting in place training, right? Which could be all, and that's one of the challenges also, which could be all sorts of training, right? It doesn't just need to be about the umbrella term research management. It can be about the parts. It doesn't just need to be a short training. It can be a training program. It can be a module for bachelors, for masters. It can be an executive masters, like there are already a number emerging in Europe. So how do we sort of create something. And what we're creating here in this project is a handbook within, now I will mention in the work package 1, we're creating a handbook for that to be done. And then when you think, okay, we're creating a handbook, I'll maybe come back to the content more in a moment. What do you do, right? You've got smart people with the experience, which we have on the consortium, starting to build this based on all that has happened, based also on a literary study of what others have done, benchmarking with other programs, with other continents, what they are doing, with national examples, and so on. And writing that, what do you do then? Pretty much see if it makes sense, right? So the other step that we are taking in the project is the pilot testing. So we've created, and also this is baked into the consortium. That's also where we got a pretty large consortium for 1 million 2-year project. That's maybe one thing to mention. It's a very short project because we wanted to be quick with this. We knew this could be done in a quick way. So pilot testing it. So we have clusters in there. Why do I say clusters? Because one of the key points, which actually you also very nicely made the bridge into, Niels, is it's not just about us, right? It's not, I'm saying us now, I know there's more listeners out there, but I mean the research management community, inward looking, what would we like? What do we think is valuable? It's very important that the system, the leadership, the funding organizations, the ministries, the policymakers, that they understand this is part of something which we're trying to together reinforce each other, right? So with clusters, I mean both a training provider, but also linked and supported by ministries and funding organizations and leadership, right? So we have this baked in different parts into the project. And then we do this pilot testing. And concretely, that pilot testing is about, hey, look at our handbook. What do you think about it, right? That's, let's say, the first fundamental level. Second fundamental level is look at sort of the training or education you are doing. And if you were to implement this, then is that possible? Does that add something? Is it good? Is it difficult? It doesn't work. Is it against the law in your country or whatever, against the practices? Do you get no buy-in? And then the next level is then trying to really test it sort of, and that's difficult in this 2-year project, to really test it live, let's say, so that we come up with a manual that is good and strong. And the other thing about this, which is also in the project, is a quality label or some sort of a seal or a mechanism. I don't want to, I hope you've heard also in my introduction, I'm not so much about, let's say, enforcing people, you must do this, or you have to do this, or it's the best, right? We're going in a direction, giving things to people which they can work better together and make a stronger system together, make a stronger training together in this case. But we are looking for those who then are with this, who are doing this, who adopt this manual that we are building, who build stronger training through it, so that we can give them also recognition that they have done this, and that if that all works well, that could be a very strong force in going towards standardization, going towards interoperability, so the collaboration within Europe. Of course, that's what we're going to do. So manual, pilot test that manual, then see if we can attach that quality label. And next to this, also creating a lot of awareness, seeing what is the value of this training as well, the value proposition, a little bit the business case behind it. Although there, we're an in-between project, let's say, right? We're not developing the training itself, although we have a lot of training developers in there, but for them to think about how can we enable other training providers to have an easier job and to be sort of more similar within Europe.
Yeah. So this is a classical method project, so to say, methodology. Yeah. So you want to build the guidelines, so to say, of how to do things. So you're not developing trainings, as you say, but you're developing a basis for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How detailed is that handbook going to be? Have you got sort of have you already sketched in the proposal and in this phase? You're 6 months in, right? Have you sketched how extended that's going to be?
Yes, we're actually pretty far already. I have to say, though, while I am the coordinator of this project, we've got great educational experts on this, which I am not one of, right? So it's hard for me to go into those details exactly. But I can say that our partners from CHE and ZWM, which are two German partners, that are leading this effort have progressed it very far. We've already done a number of co-creation workshops with the consortium, and pretty much a draft, let's say, handbook and a way from RM Comp up to where we want to start the pilot testing in draft is ready, right? And is pretty detailed already. Of course, like I said, it's a draft, and we'll adjust it. But I can't say too much more about exactly what that is and how it works. But we are already quite far.
And the commission's going to do you hear this, EU Commission? They're far. They're doing well with the fund. They're not pissing your money away.
No. Indeed, that's also one of the things I wanted to do here, because you could say also that's also why I try to not go into the technicalities of it. If you're not in this niche, for me it's super exciting, right? But I'm sort of in this let's say. But it's a fast project. It's 2 years, almost no projects for those of you who do these projects and know them well. So CSAs, coordination and support actions in Horizon Europe, there's very few ones that are 2 years, often 3 years, 4 years. That's 2 years and a half, right? We're doing this quickly because it's a next incremental step that we know with the group of people we have, we can do quite quick, based on these projects that are there, and deliver quite quick. So it's quite feasible. But indeed, also that we need to. On the other hand, it seems like the kickoff meeting was yesterday, and now we're already sort of in month 6, and 25%. I don't know if it's month 6 or month 5, something like this. Then 25% of the time has elapsed, and we have summer to come and Christmas to come, and suddenly we're 1 year into it, and then 50% has elapsed. So that's also. But we've got the mood is good in the project, and we're advancing very rapidly.
Yeah, and I can see that it's not an Erasmus funded project. It's a Horizon Europe funded project.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So it's funded under the WIDE era, so the Widening and Era work program, which is then sort of the ERA European Research Area part of this, so not the widening part of the WIDE era.
No. Then a thought that hit me, because now for you and also for the listeners should know that since I've been doing this for 3 years with weekly releases, I have a lot of episodes out there. I have 180 at this stage now. Of course, I have been having research managers in because I find it important to shed light on this area. So I've been talking to quite a good handful also from your network, Nik. Now. And what we've been talking about the difficulty of the recognition of the role, and how difficult it is in some cultures of Europe, organizational cultures, to get recognition from managers and so on. Now, is it something you? Are you dealing with this in the handbook? Is it in the handbook? Is it something that's okay? You have some places here where you have some difficult questions to deal with in relation to the research management role. Is that something? Are you dressing them up, people from hierarchical organizational cultures, to give them some tools? So
yes. Although that's not the primary goal of the project, right? I'll go into it in a moment where we're doing it. So really sort of the recognition of the profession, which is one of the pillars of, for example, the EARMA strategy, pretty much very high on the agenda of anybody following the research management and administration movement, or the policy objectives and so on. So here more, it's one of the building blocks that we want to have to make that case in a better way, and to show, make that case is a bit to show the role and the value, because it's already while it's not a recognized profession, right? It is a profession that is there and operating. So we're not talking so much about let's say, putting something in place that is not there. Although it is the case for some organizations and some countries that it's there to a lesser extent, we're talking about how to make this perform better, how to make it known better. So it's more awareness creation. But then, of course, we need to get back to the fundamentals, and that's what we're trying to do, because now we've got a very organically grown, in a sense, chaotic, sometimes excellent, sometimes very weak system, right? System or instances of research management. And more to the, let's say, the core of your question, we have this, we're building this handbook, of course, right? This is one of the key outcomes. Next to this, we've got a whole stakeholder analysis, looking at the impact, how we raise the awareness, how we involve the different actors. I forget the technical term now for a moment. I think it's pathways to impact, but there's this other term that constantly my colleagues running the work package tell me, but now I can't. And now I suddenly can't get to it. We discussed it yesterday, even yesterday evening, but okay. But in the handbook itself, I'm going to that. We are tackling some of those crucial questions that are at the base of it. Maybe I'll say a little bit more about the handbook, sort of, and then show that. Sort of, we're. So we've got a table of contents in there, of course, and we're talking at the first instance about the definition, right? The definition, the target groups for who is this for, what's the logic of it, and so on. So there will be a good introduction to this. And then what we started, and there it starts really, I think, with your question. We have a part in there which is called a baseline definition of research management, and that's very, very important, right? Because any case that you make for recognition, who are you making it for? And while this sometimes to our community sounds a bit strange, this is extremely important, right? Because if you cannot articulate this clearly, if you cannot also, and that's one of the other things that are part of this, if you cannot give any numbers on how large that group might be, it becomes very difficult to talk to anybody in a serious decision-making or policy-making situation, because you're saying we're advocating for a group, but we don't have the definition. So that's going to be in there again and progressed more, some more advance on the terminology to who it's relevant, what it does for the ecosystem. But then also the next one to your question is the segmentation of functions, right? As I said, it's an umbrella term, and there again it goes to saying who we are. So segmentation, meaning what are the different roles? You named a lot of them. I named a lot of them. Can we proposal writer, data steward, somebody working on CRIS systems, current research information systems. Those are somebody who's in a Brussels office, somebody doing project management, and so on. There's much stuff. So that segmentation is very important. Then we go to also the standards. What standards are we referring to? What are we using? Like the Bologna, right? Interoperability around that, qualification frameworks, ECTS, so the European credit transfer and accumulation system. Also, what sort of curriculums? How do you develop these curriculums based on these standards that we have and based on the niche of research management, the definition that we have? And one of the key aspirations we have there also to bring more, let's say, uniformity. I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but to bring more similarity within Europe is we want to attach it to job profiles, right? So that you can. This is one of the key things also, because now what is a job profile? What is often, not always, but what is often your reality as a research management manager? It means what the local leadership has decided will.
Exactly. It's sort of a Pandora's. They can say anything, but we think it covered it. You know, like if.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things. Well, maybe from my personal example also, because I was with the EU office, and then sometimes now it's quite some time ago since I was there. But with a lot of EU offices, anything with the EU flag comes to them. But I was really, what the core of it was Horizon Europe projects for me, then FP7 projects at the time. So we have, for people who are less familiar with there's framework programs called FP. So, and they started with 1, then they went to 7, but after 7, then we changed the names. Although now we're looking at 10, but they have different names, and that's the Horizon projects. But there's also other types of projects. There's Erasmus projects, with which Niels already put forward. But anything with the EU flag would come to that office. But sort of, it's not because I know about, in the beginning of my career, the research participant portal. It's not because I know about budgets that I know about deliverables, how to report them deliverables. It's not that I know about project management. It's not that I know about EU tenders. Not that I know about EU policy necessarily in the field of nano whatever, right? So that sense, that's a classical thing of where we need these EU guys in place, or you have another rationale. There can be many other rationales, and in some countries, unfortunately, and that's something we need to address as well. In some countries, this information is coming in English mainly, so the best English speakers are the people to deal with this. So you understand there that also it is that's a, let's say, an example and a barrier and a difficulty, which is actually, if you look at it, similar to what I was saying, right? Because the EU projects are coming in. Anything with the EU flag is for me, even though I might not have the skills and competencies to be dealing with that. And there, anything even in English comes in, even though that person might not have the track record to work with it, nor the training. And then where do you start, right? And this is also why we want to get to these job profiles, because then suddenly you do have these anchor points, right? I don't want to call them standards yet. I don't think they are standards, although maybe we can move towards that as soon as we are able. But then, okay, we got a job profile. How do you do a job profile? The job profile is linked to the skills and competencies, and the training is also linked to the skills and competencies, right? So suddenly you start having these groups, right, of skills and competencies, which is normal for most professions. And that's one of the key things to understand here, maybe also, because I talked about an umbrella, right? You could look sometimes more than being a profession, that it's a group of professions, a group of professions for which each part, right, has their own maturity, has their own developmental stage, which makes it quite difficult, right? And they have their own standards. And what makes them a group, right? It is their relation to the research and innovation efforts. Right? The relation to researchers, their relationships to organizations working in research or towards innovators, and so on. This is what groups them, right? And the difficulty is because we quite often talk about, okay, but really, is it that much different from engineers or doctors? Because doctors, they have all sorts of specializations almost endlessly if you go into the detail of the treatments and so on. So we also have all of these endless specializations. The thing is that doctors come almost always, so I'm sure somebody will maybe point out some sort of a different, let's say the modern medical science, they come from the same core, right? They have a doctor training. Not the case for research managers, right? We might have finance training. We might have been researchers moving into research management. We might have a legal background. And it's pretty much understood within the community that the going together of a team with all of these skills makes very good research management, right? If it's then organized well, that's good research management. Where if you get maybe only PhDs or ex-researchers, who's going to handle the financial part? Not saying that some of them might not want to or not good in this, but maybe it is better to have somebody coming from the finance sector there. And this is one of the things, right? Because we're working back a little bit from this organic situation, getting to basics and putting in place the basics. But what are we putting in place the basics for, right? Because these people are coming from very different directions in relationship to the research. They are research managers, but take out this financial person and put them in an accountancy firm, and they might function well. Take a legal person out there, and they might function well in a legal firm. Take the maybe PhD, ex-PhD or postdoc person out there and put them in a research environment within a company, and they might be a good researcher there. So that is one of the key challenges that we're trying to address, which makes it difficult. And then you see that we go to these levels of complexity, right? Because we're doing this in a segment of research management, in a specific country with different practices and laws, within a European sort of larger frame, within an organization that is organized in a certain way, within there a leadership person making a decision. We need a job done. That person's going to do it. Please figure out what the job description. Of course, sometimes it's more intricate than that, and you can have national standards and frameworks and so on for this type of person. So it's not black and white, right? But we're going to figure that out now in the situation we want to go to, and that's why we're doing these job profiles and this framework and this competency framework. It's a situation where we're going to say, okay, you're doing that, but take into account that those are different types of profiles, which have different types of skills and competencies, which have different skills, training needs, and so on. And take that into account now and look nationally also. And that's why we're wanting to translate this nationally as much as possible, what the standard is. And then in an ideal situation down the road, or that's what we're evolving to, you might suddenly find that your research manager or your researcher understands the researcher from that other country much, much better. And that these difficult things like pension schemes for researchers, or how do they collaborate, or how do we set up contracts that work for all of us, might suddenly start getting quite a bit easier.
Yeah. Well done. So it's Obviously, you're putting up a very, very important frame that is needed in the steps to professionalize the research management sector. Well done. Now we are moving towards the end of this recording. Is there anything around the workflow in the project you want to share, or is it getting too unnecessarily geeky on?
No, maybe I'll share a few things. I haven't mentioned the partners and so on. I'll try to keep it short. So we're trying to undertake this with let's say national clusters. Let's say so. There's also other organizations attached to this. We also plan to have sort of a possibility that people could still join in this second wave of pilot testing that we'll have. So we are the coordinators, EARMA. Then we have CHE. Running our first work package, which is the Center for Higher Education Studies in Germany. I'll forgo the German title, and I hope my colleagues will forgive me for that. And then the HEDFA Research Institute in Hungary. We're doing this also with the University of Coimbra in Portugal. AGAUR, which is let's say, shortly put, the funding agency of the Catalan region in Spain. And also they are linked in this project and also a project partner with the ministry there of Catalonia. And that's also what I was talking about, right? I'm trying to avoid this sort of echo chamber of research managers from RPOs. That's good, right? And we have a job to do there, but it's important that the whole system sort of understands as an included. And when we go to the whole system, an important thing that is developing is the European alliances. So we have the 4 EU Plus alliance in there, and supported by the University of Warsaw, specifically in this case, the Charles University in Czechia, and the Sorbonne University in France. We've got a partner in there with a lot of expertise in research management training, specifically related to research infrastructure. So that's a university in Milan, Bicocca. And we've got also another German partner, the Zentrum für Wissenschaftsmanagement, so ZWM, which is from, let's say, the Speyer area in Germany, training association, also a non-profit training association with a lot of expertise. And then we've got sorry, I made a mistake there. A number of associated partners: Corvinus University in Budapest. We've got UPM, so the Politecnica de Madrid, Carol Davila University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Romania, and we've also got our kind colleagues and good colleagues from CHARMA, so the Czech. I find this the nicest ARMA one, although you have CARMA as well. Maybe that's a bit niche what I'm saying now, but CHARMA is the nicest name of national association. It's a bit niche in the sense that we're called EARMA, but then you have the Norwegians who are called NARMA, ISARMA in Ireland, SWARMA in Sweden. You've got SARMA, which is very funny to all of the people in the region. SARMA in Serbia, which is also a national dish there, which is also a nice one. But in Czechia, you have CHARMA. You've got others, ARMANEL in the Netherlands, BARMA in Belgium, where I thought we missed an opportunity. We could have called it barman, but okay, that was maybe more for the drink section of this. So that's the people we're trying to do this with. A quite big consortium, like I said, for a 1 million project, and we've got these major strands. I've not pulled them out as work packages, but we've got one on the handbook, on the pilot testing, on awareness creation, on the quality seal. Like I said, it's a CSA, 2 years, 1 million euro, and getting this handbook right is the key thing, and getting that piloted and making bigger awareness known. I can go into another level of detail, but that's maybe for next time.
Yeah, and we have 15 episodes and now 14 left.
So these people you'll get to know.
Indeed, and I can already now say the second episode is up and coming is being planned, and that's going to be on state of the art of trainings and educational programs for research management. So we will dig into different corners. There's lots of time here to dig into the different corners and fold things out. And I will also exchange a little bit with your communication lead on different formats. I think it would be nice to make some panels as we go with different partners on board, and maybe discussion episodes or debate episodes. We'll take that as we move on. But there's going to be lots of content coming out about this project. So. But before we finalize and end up the episode, I wanted just to have here towards the end a short section on the expectations. So we have been talking about, so you'll have the handbook, but is there anything else, both formally or informally, on the expected outcomes that you want to share?
Yes, the main thing, let's say at this level, is this handbook is a tool
Sure.
towards something. I think I made that very clear. So we want that handbook to come out. We want a quality label to come out, or similar mechanism, and especially also we want this not to happen in isolation. So there's some very fun, good, interesting stuff, and that's for maybe the episodes also on the stakeholder engagement and on the dissemination, that we are trying to really also look at the value proposition of this. Where does it come in, with what stakeholders? How does it make the system stronger? So this is, let's say, this next step is one of technicity in a sense. What should this manual be done? What should this manual do? One of practicality, which is what the pilot testing is about. One of recognition, in a sense, which is what the quality label is about, and one of awareness, which is this dissemination, stakeholder engagement is about. And in that frame, also we end with this podcast, in a sense, trying to make that more available in more innovative ways all of the time. And also, what I didn't mention is that we're trying to, and might come forward later on, also trying to see how does AI play into this, and how can we leverage these AI tools. I didn't mention it so much because we've taken a bit of a different, well, I don't know if it's a different approach, but in this, because we don't want to see what can we build in AI, because the budget and expertise of this group of people, I don't think lends itself to that. But how can we use this developing AI to help develop training, to help identify people? How can they see what the training is for them? How can we use it in the awareness creation and the outreach, and especially this translation potential for AI is really, really amazing. Because I don't know if you've played around with this yourself, Niels.
Oh,
Or
I'm
people,
using it. I'm using it all
yeah,
the time.
or people listening to it, but the translation capabilities, not just in written text, but really well, not instantly, but very quickly, transforming a training to almost be a perfect translation, is really, I think, a tool that will be great. And I actually, a buddy of mine is the CFO of a big translation company, and they also have a lot of work cut out for them to stay relevant and to transition their business model, because this is getting so crazy good.
All right. Yeah, indeed. Good. Thanks, Nick. Let's round this up. So in a short outro, of course, we will say goodbye to the listeners, but maybe I sort of round up things. So just to make everybody guide people in the right direction, in the episode where you listen to your podcast in your player in Spotify or Apple Podcast, in the episode notes there, you'll find a link, and that link will bring you to the grant site of the RM framework. I have put up a site there specifically for this project where all episodes are gathered. Of course, now you'll only have one episode, but that's where you'll find the episodes gathered on my platform. You will also see it in the feed on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You will come with collaboration. That's the first word, and then you will see RM Framework series. So that's that. Of course, on the site, on my platform, you'll find a link to the RM Framework own website. There they will have lots of information for you about the development of the project. And I will, over time, I will develop together with the project team different information to be put on the website here on the grant, where you can find the tools and the handbook and so on. Yeah. Nik, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Looking much forward to digging deep into this project and having nice conversations with the. I hope you will be on the show later also again, and with the different partners from and following the work that you'll be doing. So it's very nice.
Yeah, and they're lovely people who are involved, so it will be a good time.
Now, Nik, let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Grant Collaborations, a part of the Grant podcast. This podcast episode is a collaboration between the RM Framework project and the grant. All episodes in this RM Framework series have their own site on the grant website. You will find a link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Nik's LinkedIn site and a link to the project website. Next episode will be released 8th of October and will zoom in on the state of the art within research management and trainings. You can look forward to that. You have been listening to the Grand Collaborations, a part of the Grand Podcast.